Hello, this is the Counting Crasher, recapping the finale for The Courtship, Season 1, Episode 12, Commitment of a Lifetime. Warning, this was a 2-hour finale, so it's going to be a long recap. Last week, we finally got to say goodbye to Mr. Chapman and his crass post-nut clarity. Now we have 3 stellar suitors vying for Miss Remy's heart, and only 2 will make it to the farewell ball. The sweet Mr. Judge, the passionate Mr. Cones, the genuine Mr. Bochicchio. We start off the episode with Miss Remy in her ITM stating she wants a proposal and a commitment at the end of this. Then we switch to see Miss Remy and her court sitting outside. Nicole goes on to highlight the 3 suitors left and says all 3 are incredible, and her court agrees. Miss Remy says Mr. Cones gives her the space to just be herself. Her friend Tessa says you cannot not love him. Her sister says he's so wonderful, and I agree. Miss Remy says Mr. Bochicchio is genuine, honest, and she knows he cares. And that Mr. Judge is constantly a surprise, even though he was a late arrival. He has a beautiful side to him that is subtle, charismatic, sweet, and enduring. The Daily Tea arrives. It reads, quote, after Mr. Chapman was chased from the premises by castle hounds, 3 suitors woke to find themselves saved by Miss Remy's clemency. But that's all in the past. Now we can wade through the sands of time and take a peek into the future. It's time to cast off the silk gloves as we take a pin to our Regency bubble. How much do we really know about the relationship of our heroine and suitors? Find out with a series of dates set up by our gentlemen, and 1 suitor will bid farewell for a final time. Her sister Miss Baker jokes, get this girl a pair of jeans and a bodysuit. And Tessa says, what happens if you hate one of their styles? And they joke that she can fix that. First up is Danny B. They finally meet in the modern world in modern clothes, and it's sweet. They kiss and hug and take breaks in between kissing and hugging to look at each other up and down in modern clothes. Danny B in his ITM says, Nicole looks effing amazing, super hot. I agree, they actually both do. He says he has a hard time expressing himself and seeing her with other guys, but he's going to put that all behind him today. Danny B says he's trying something new with the turtleneck, and Nicole jokes it's something her father would wear, and that a girl always marries her father. Danny B tells her he picked Old York for their date to match what they would do in New York, hanging out in the park on a bench in the city. Then they head over to a cafe to eat and have some drinks. They talk about doing a bi-coastal life with Nicole in Seattle and Danny B in New York. Danny responds that the more he talks to her family and her about Seattle, the more he sees it as a spot he'd want to be at. Nicole seems to like this, and they cheers. He admits he's not the best at expressing his feelings, but he tries to show her his feelings. And now that he's become more comfortable, with her at least, he can express himself better. He reiterates that he really likes her. He sees a future with her, and he hopes that they can make this work after the show, and in the year's time, they can come back to York to relive it. She likes what she hears. Nicole takes off her jacket for some, what she calls, arm room, and Danny B is loving what he sees. She does have amazing arms. She says, it's easy to imagine life with you, Danny B. They show them kissing again, and Danny says, I can't stop. I'm sorry. I love this. I love them. They look really cute. They look like a couple. Danny seems so sweet and genuinely into Nicole. I like that he keeps it real with her, and I like that he's trying to mimic or at least show her what it would be like back in the real world. Up next is Jesse. We see Jesse sitting at a bar. When Nicole walks up, he says she looks more beautiful in modern dress. They spin each other around and check each other out. He says he did research and figured out her favorite drink is French 75. He steps behind the bar and starts making her a drink, and Nicole is like, oh wow, no measuring. Jesse is very heavy-handed with the alcohol. He's just pouring it in, and when she actually tries it, she says it's not palatable. The bartender comes to the rescue and makes them some drinks. They cheers, and he asks her, how was her drink? She says, yours was better, and he grabs her drink and says, let me see if you're lying to me. I love this. We are seeing his personality here, and it's fun and goofy, and I'm here for it. Jesse asks her, what would you take back from the Regency into the modern world? Her response, having my family involved in my dating life, which is such a weird response, but then he points to himself and she gapes and says, I didn't know you were asking for a person. She says, of course bringing you back would be out of this world. She asks, have you gotten what you wanted out of this experience? And his response, not yet. We don't see Nicole respond to this. She just gives him a coy smile and they end the date, walking out together. Then they start making out immediately, and he literally lifts her up and puts her on a ledge and continue to make out. It's super sexy. Honestly, this date shows how young Jesse is. The bar setting, the overpouring of alcohol. I think this date put him back in Nicole's eyes, and at least it did for me, at least the first half. In comparison to Danny's date, which was so real, grounded in how real life would be together, this date felt like a first date in college, not two people trying to make a life together. The way I see it, Jesse is sweet, they have amazing chemistry, but maturity-wise, I don't think they match. Also, I don't think Jesse challenges her in the way that Danny B or even Christian does, and Nicole needs someone who can meet her at her level. Next up is Christian. He has a camping setup and tent dome structure that has the galaxy projected on the ceiling. It's kind of amazing. Christian sees Nicole and he's loving her look. They cuddle on the pillows and blankets on the floor. He says that this would be a typical date for them, stargazing. He tells her this is exactly the way the stars were aligned the night Nicole was born in Seattle, Washington. Nicole says it's incredible. She asks, when was the last time you felt your heart flutter for somebody? He replies, in quarantine, but it was disastrous. He wasn't receiving what he needed, and says Nicole does that for him. Nicole says he's easy to talk to. He says, when you walked in, I said, welcome to our universe, nobody else's. She says, I like that. And they lean in and kiss. He tells her, you deserve the moon and the stars and everything in between. I mean, oh my God, what a line. In her ITM, she says Christian is romantic and she can see a bright future with him. We see them standing as they slow dance and kiss. Christian in his ITM says he has never had a connection like this with anyone, and he hopes she feels the same about him. Now, Christian definitely wins best date in my book. The creativity, the romance, it was all about Nicole, but I just don't see the chemistry between these two. The romance seems forced. I think at this point it's clear Christian is going home. Nicole has a stronger physical and romantic connection with Danny and Jesse, and unfortunately Christian is clearly just a friend. Which makes me sad because he's so amazing and this date was like unbelievable. It's nighttime. Nicole, the host, Mr. Edwards, and all three suitors stand outside of the castle. Everyone is still in their modern clothes. Only two suitors will return to the castle. All three men in their ITMs express they are nervous. Nicole says this person has made her feel things she didn't know she could feel, and that he continues to surprise her. The way she feels with him is the way everyone should feel in a relationship. The first suitor returning to the castle is Danny. He kisses her on the cheek, hugs and thanks her, says, "I promise I'll make you happy." Nicole has two suitors before her, Jesse and Christian, and she says that the next person she wasn't sure that they could get there, but this week being in the modern world really opened her eyes. She felt butterflies with this person, which was incredible, and she names Jesse. Jesse walks over, hugs her, and tells her, "I felt it too," gives her a kiss on the cheek, and stands by Danny. In his ITM, he says he knows their connection is strong and that she is the missing piece in his puzzle. He is anxious but feels confident she will pick him in the end. Now, Christian looks devastated, like a sad puppy. Nicole walks up to him, they hug, and he starts to cry. You can hear him breathing heavily on the mic. As a tear runs down Nicole's face, she says she appreciates him, he's incredible, and she's sorry that it's not him. Christian says, "I promise you one thing, I will never forget you." He kisses her forehead and they hug. He tells her, "I'm going to miss you so much," she thanks him. He turns to the guys and says, he turns to the guys and says, "Fellas, you take care of her, okay?" And they salute him. In Christian's ITM, he says he doesn't know what happened, that it's stinging, that he just watched one of the most amazing girls go off in a carriage that he's not in. He ripped his heart open for her, and now it's open. He needs to figure out how to sew it back up. He's going to really miss her. We see Christian leave back to the modern world, and honestly, oh my God, he's a poet. He's so romantic. It's hard to watch him go. I love him. Next, we see Miss Rémy, Mr. Bochicchio, and Mr. Judge return to the Regency era in the carriage. And when they arrive at the castle and come out, they are no longer in modern clothes, but actually wearing Regency era clothes. Clearly, they had a wardrobe change that we were not privy to, and I'd like to think this happened in the carriage. That would have been an interesting and fun scene to watch. It's the next day, and we see Miss Rémy in the court in the parlor talking about their final decision. She asks for the pros and cons on her remaining two suitors and who they think would be the best husband. Mr. Rémy says he loves Mr. Judge, the way he behaves and carries himself, and that he would be a good husband and good father. Her sister Danny B her sister says, "Danny B is your speed. I feel like you're going to hit the ground running and it's going to be passionate relationship right off the bat." Her friend agrees and says that Miss Rémy is compatible with Danny B, but Jessie offers a lot of growth. She goes on to say both men's faces light up when dancing with Nicole, but also Nicole's face lights up with both suitors. Mrs. Rémy says Judge is not Nicole's speed now, but she thinks he can get to her speed, and Nicole agrees. Mrs. Rémy goes on to say, in marriage, you are going to argue, you're going to disagree, but that's what gets you through, knowing how deeply they care about you. The last daily tea arrives. It reads, "As this year's session comes to a close, we find ourselves with only two suitors left, fighting for Miss Rémy's heart. with the final ball of the season approaching, and with her trusted court by her side. Which of our two heroes will Miss Rémy choose? 2 dates remain, presenting Miss Rémy with the final opportunity to assess her options. Will Mr. Bochicchio be able to express his feelings? And will Mr. Judge surprise and delight with a romantic gesture? Miss Rémy's future awaits, but with whom? The first date is with Mr. Bochicchio. Miss Rémy runs over to kiss Mr. Bochicchio, who's standing beside a horse. He helps her up on the horse and easily jumps on behind her. It was actually amazing. They talk while riding the horse together, which is sort of crazy. They're able to do this because Miss Rémy's sitting side saddle, so they can kind of face each other. She asks him if he's sad to leave this place, and he says he is. He says it's been an amazing experience. They talk about how wonderful their modern world date was, that it's something they could do back home. They talk about what they can do back in Seattle. He says the West Coast sounds great. Nicole asks, what if we had more of an urban place in Manhattan and more of a suburban place in Seattle? He responds, that's fair. She goes on to say, and a beach house in Hawaii. And he responds, oh, I love that. In his ITM, he says, sometimes I'm not the best at saying things in the moment, but little does she know, I have a little surprise to come about how I feel. They arrive at their destination with a string quartet in the garden. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Mr. Judge is meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Rémy. In the parent ITMs, they say Mr. Judge is deep, hardworking, and mature. They ask Mr. Judge what makes him think he's the right choice for Miss Rémy. He tells them, I feel that what I can offer her, what Mr. Bochicchio could not, is the sense of safety for her. I know she has big aspiration for what's to come after this, and I'm going to help her step by step. Mrs. Rémy says, Nicole having very high aspirations and wanting to be in a powerful position, and you know, it takes a really strong, confident man to be accepting and supportive of that. Mr. Judge responds, listen, I could encourage that. Side note, I wish we got to hear these conversations they mentioned of Nicole talking about her big aspirations. I hope we at least get to see this from her post-show. She's such an amazing woman, and I can't wait to hear about what her dreams are, what her ambitions are. I only wish we got to see it on the show. That's all. Mr. Rémy asks, so when you first came here, I would have expected you to be more assertive towards Nicole, and you were pretty laid back. Mr. Judge responds, I myself, I think I am more of a go-with-the-flow person. Mrs. Rémy asks, what's your plan for trying to continue a relationship with Nicole? His response, Nicole and I talked about the future a little bit. That's what solidified it for me. I think I can see a clear, vivid picture of us and starting a family. You guys have done an excellent job, and I really want to take factors that you have incorporated into your kids, into my own family. And I think it would be wonderful if that would be with Nicole. I thought that was so sweet, by the way. And yes, Mr. and Mrs. Rémy are amazing, and they raised an amazing family. Mr. Rémy says, wow, that's nice to hear. Mr. Judge lets them know their blessing is important to him. Mr. Rémy tells him, you need to let her know that she's the one. Don't tell us, tell Nicole. We jump back to Mr. Bochicchio and Miss Rémy's date. They are now walking over to the picnic where Mr. Bochicchio has a surprise. We see rolled up pieces of paper tied to a tree above. He tells her, each one of these is something that I would want you to know to share with you. She responds, I'm already starting to cry. He reads one of the letters to her. When we touch, my heart skips a beat. We can see Nicole look up at him tearing up. She reads the next one. My mom is gonna love you. And he says she will. And Nicole tears are really, she's really starting to cry now. And I'm sorry, but this one really got to me too. I just loved it. Who doesn't want to hear my mom is gonna love you? Nicole reads the next one. Your laugh lights up my heart. He says, I love your laugh. I can't. And they kiss. The next one she opens is blank. He tells her the reason why it's blank is I didn't want to write down how I felt. I wanted to tell you how I felt. I'm so happy. I'm here with you. And that I love you. She responds, are you serious? And they kiss, a really long, passionate kiss. They sit down and she tells him this whole time she thought he was going to break her heart. He tells her he's nervous because there is still one more person left. And she responds, no matter what, I'm going to break somebody's heart. And that stresses her out. Next up is Mr. Judge and Miss Remy's date. They are walking around the castle grounds. He pulls out a chicken foot. Yes, a chicken foot. And you should see Miss Remy's reaction. She jumps back, and I would have too. He holds out his arm, and a hawk named Roland lands on his hand and eats the chicken foot. The hawk has a pouch on his leg, and in the pouch is a key that leads to a secret room in the castle. This was really elaborate. I mean, just to get a key to a secret door. But you know what? I loved it. I appreciated the effort. Special thanks and shout out to Roland the Hawk. It was great. It was epic. They head to the castle and open the secret door with the key. They enter a balcony high up just under that painted dome of the main room where the farewell dances take place. He tells her this is where it all began for them, and he wants to continue to share moments with her. She says she does too, and they kiss. Meanwhile, Mr. Bochicchio is meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Remy, the parents. So let me start off by saying the way this segment is edited with the long silent pauses and dramatic music, the show is clearly trying to exaggerate the awkwardness and Mr. Bochicchio's nervousness. It just wanted to point it out. Mr. Bochicchio tells the parents that he wants their blessing. Mr. Remy asks what life will look like after the show. Mr. Bochicchio says, I'm ready to have a relationship, and if it's okay with you, I would love to move in and live with Nicole. Mrs. Remy says, we didn't move in together until a month or so before getting married, but things have changed and that's fair. But if she moves in with you, she's going to be really committed to you. So I'd like to hear from you. What are your feelings about commitment? Mr. Bochicchio says, I can't make any guarantees. All I can do is promise you that I will do my best to make her happy, and I think that we can make this work. Mrs. Remy asks, what's the plan if this doesn't work? Mr. Bochicchio responds, the plan would be to always be honest. Sometimes things don't work out, and that's one thing that I can promise you, that I will be honest and truthful to her. Mrs. Remy says, I feel confident about that one of the things I've thought about you all along was that you were very honest. At times, honesty that I wasn't wanting to hear, but I feel good about the fact that you're willing to be honest. That's so important because there are no perfect relationships. Mr. Rémy says, when Claire and I first got married, I had to be the one making the compromises. I actually decided to move my career and had to start anew. And I never minded because I knew I wanted to accomplish, but more importantly, I wanted her to be the mother of my children. Mr. Bochicchio responds, that's beautiful. And you can see in his face, he really means it. He goes on to say, I'm willing to compromise and I'm willing to work. I was just a little skeptical, but I've realized that this is possible. This is such a story to tell, and I feel like it's worth giving your all. Mr. Rémy responds, wow, quite revealing. The parents tell him that Miss Rémy wants to continue with some Regency traditions, such as chivalry and etiquette, and Mr. Bochicchio says he can do that. And he can keep it Regency with her. I like that, keeping it Regency. Meanwhile, we jump back to Mr. Judge and Miss Rémy's date. It's starting to get dark outside, and they are entering the woods where there is a camp set up for them. Jesse likes nature, hunting, and fishing, and he starts a fire to heat up some sandwiches. They talk about a potential family and future, and he asks Miss Rémy how many kids does she want. She says 3 to 5, and she hopes that's not scary. Mr. Judge says he always wanted 3, 2 boys and a girl, a daddy's girl. He says he would take time off of work to be with them, and says to be a good father, he would treat their mother well, and to be a good husband, he would treat the kids well. He wants his next relationship to lead to marriage and children. She asks what it will be like to take her home. And what Jesse says next makes my heart skip a beat. He's so confident. It's amazing. He says, quote, "Honestly, Nicole, I don't know if I'm going home. Seattle sounds real nice." She responds, "Oh my gosh," and they kiss. Nicole in her ITM says, he's sweet, charming, sexy, and wants a life and future with him. And I have to say, oh my God, after this date, I was team Jesse. The way he talks about being a husband and kids, and he's so all in, it's amazing. It's the final day, and tonight is the Diamond Ball, where Miss Rémy will be picking her final suitor. Everyone is dressed in white, including the host, Mr. Edwards, the suitors, and guests. Just before Miss Rémy enters the ball, Mr. Judge whispers to Mr. Bochicchio, quote, "God, I could have used a shot," end quote. It was adorable. You can tell these two like each other. God, they're both so sweet. Miss Rémy walks in, and the suitors both have the biggest smile on their faces. Mr. Bochicchio in his ITM says he has no words, that Miss Rémy pulls off every look flawlessly. 100% agree. Mr. Judge in his ITM wants her to take him home and call him hers. Wow. Miss Rémy says she is torn, she is nervous and undecided. Her parents tell her they gave their blessing to both gentlemen because they believe either one is a fine young man for her. They trust her to make the right decision. They tell her to follow her heart. First up for the final dance is Mr. Judge. She tells him, "I felt like from the moment I saw you, I knew there was something special about you. I feel like we've always just picked up momentum and that I never want that to stop. Life with you can really be fantastic." Then was Mr. Bochicchio's turn for his final dance. He asks her, "How are you doing?" She says, "Nervous. I feel like our connection was undeniably strong." She asks, "How do you feel?" And he responds, "I'm just in the moment with you. I'm happy. I'm here with you. I love you." And honestly, you could just tell these two are definitely in love. Just the way they look at each other, it's amazing. And at this point, Mr. Bochicchio is the only one that has told Nicole that he loves her. And I think that pretty much locked it in for him. We see her sister, Miss Baker, say to Tessa, "When I look at them together, it's like the whole world disappears, and I can see it disappearing for them." We cut to Mr. Judge saying in his ITM, "Seeing Miss Rémy with Danny B, their connection and their relationship makes me a little uneasy." Mr. Judge walks up to Miss Rémy to tell her he feels their connection is stronger and asks her to step outside to speak with her privately. Miss Baker takes this opportunity with Miss Rémy and Mr. Judge gone to speak with Mr. Bochicchio. She asks him to dance and they talk. In her ITM, she says he is the most caring, charismatic guy. He's Nicole's speed and a modern day Darcy for sure. And that's what Nicole deserves. She wants to know if he's going to propose. He tells her he is serious about a future proposal, but Miss Baker is pressing him to propose sooner because if you know, you know. We cut to Miss Rémy and Mr. Judge sitting outside on the castle steps. He tells her each and every date that they have, I fall in love with you and it's exhilarating. I want you so bad, and I think that you are the missing piece in my life. I don't think you feel butterflies with everybody, and I'm the last person that's leaving you with butterflies. So that has to say something about our future. And he doesn't exactly say he's in love with him there. He says, I fall in love with you. So he's still not where Mr. Bochicchio is. Miss Rémy responds, I am starting to feel those butterflies more and more with you, Jessie. Then there's a big pause and she closes her eyes, and when she opens them, tears are coming down her face. It's so sad. And she says, I feel like I know how incredible you are and the passion that we've shared together and the progress that we've made in our relationship. And I know how incredible of a father you'll be. And I know how incredible of a husband you'll be. But I just feel like I have butterflies with someone else more. I'm so sorry. Jessie, you've given me so much of yourself, and I'm so grateful for you. At this point, you can see the sadness in his face the whole time she's talking. And he responds, you know, I'm not mad. I think I'm a little heartbroken. She kisses his cheek and she pulls his head to her shoulder and he cries. It's really, oh my God, so sad. I don't know, this might actually even be sadder than when Christian left. When he looks up, she tells him, you're so beautiful inside and out, Jessie. He says, I'm speechless. The last couple of weeks, I've just been painting this clear picture of us. It's just hard to picture that you won't be there, and now I feel so lost. Nicole is just crying a lot at this point, and he wipes a tear from her cheek. A carriage pulls up, and that's it. I mean, they say goodbye. We see Mr. Judge say in his ITM, I think I'm a good man. I think I deserve love. I'll find love. I know I'll find it. I just can't give up. Guys, I love Jesse. Seeing all of this was so heartbreaking. He's so amazing. I hope time has healed him at this point, and I know he's going to find love. He's just so incredible. After Nicole sends Jesse home, she says in her ITM, tonight was the night I wanted somebody to get down on one knee and promise me life forever, and Jesse wanted to make that commitment to me. But I knew in my heart that I couldn't make that commitment to him. Now I'm definitely nervous because Danny B is a risk. I mean, he's been the guy from the start that hasn't been able to communicate. And just recently he's told me that he's in love with me. I want Danny B to propose tonight. She starts getting really emotional at this point, closing her eyes, and her hands start shaking. And this is it for her. And she goes, oh shit, this is so real. Now I'm going to pause here because editing at this point does a voiceover of Nicole talking, and we don't actually see her say this. And she says, quote, I don't know if he's ready to commit, unquote. I think this is editing trying to build the suspense and cause more doubt in the audience's mind about Danny's commitment. But we all know Danny is committed, even committed to proposing. It's the rush to propose before Nicole has even met his family, before they even have had a chance to date in the real world. That is his hesitation, which in my opinion is 100% valid. This is why I like Danny B. He's been really in it with Nicole. He isn't playing the game. This means more to him than just a show. He's thinking about the real world and the real relationship. I think, unfortunately, the producers just got into Nicole's head. I mean, they're with her all the time. And if Nicole wasn't being pressured, she wouldn't even be thinking about a proposal. She knows better than that. Anyway, just my opinion. We are now back at the dance, and we are shown Miss Rémy and Mr. Bochicchio head outside to the fountain. Miss Rémy says, I remember our first date, night one. We walked along this way and then sat over there and watched the fireworks. And I'm thinking of how magical that was, and that magic hasn't faded between us. It's because I love you and have loved you for so long, and that hasn't stopped. Mr. Bochicchio says, I felt the same way about you. We have come so far. I think this whole journey is absolutely crazy. Nicole laughs and he says, seriously? And she agrees, no, it is. Because, you guys, it is crazy, but it's awesome and I love it and I'm here for it. He goes on to say, a guy from Staten Island, not that interesting, meets this beautiful girl. Didn't know what to say, and now I'm like expressing all these feelings towards you, and somehow manages to win her heart. We make an epic love story. I think that this is only the beginning, and I just think that it will keep getting better and better. I look forward to the future with you, and I love you. Then there is a dramatic pause. He stands up, pulls out a box, and gets down on one knee as Miss Rémy is clearly in shock. She covers her mouth. She tears up, saying, are you kidding me? Oh my God. Mr. Bochicchio says, Nicole Rémy, will you marry me? Again, she says, oh my God, yes, Danny, 100 times over. They hug and kiss. He places the ring on her finger. She says the ring is beautiful. He says, I'm absolutely crazy, but I love you, so I'm all in. She says, I'm so all in, Danny. And they kiss again. He then says, oh, by the way, I forgot to ask, am I the last suitor here? So I have to say I had the same question. I wasn't sure if Danny knew that she had sent Mr. Judge home. So it's kind of amazing that this all happened, that he actually proposed not knowing if he was the last suitor standing. Miss Rémy replies, Danny, you're the last suitor, and I just want to start forever with you right now. They kiss again, and she says, oh, Jesus, that's a really beautiful ring, and says, Nicole Bochicchio. Mr. Bochicchio says that he knows he found love, he has found his future wife, and he couldn't be happier. She asks, do my parents know? And he says no, so they run off to tell them. We are back at the ball where we see the court, and they're acknowledging that they don't know who she has picked. Apparently, no one knows that she sent home Mr. Judge. Only she knew. Miss Rémy and Danny enter the hall to applause. She flashes the engagement ring, and that's when her court screams in excitement. Her sister runs to Danny, hugging him. You're going to be my brother-in-law. Everyone is crying and hugging. Miss Rémy goes up to Mr. Rémy, goes up to Mr. Bochicchio and says congratulations. Mr. Bochicchio says thank you. I got lucky. And Mr. Rémy says, you both did, and I agree. Her mom tells her they are so happy for her and they absolutely adore him. They are announced by the host as the future Mr. and Mrs. Bochicchio. Mr. Bochicchio says, every little step of this journey has been so memorable, from the knickers to the cravats, and the fountain kisses to the walks in the garden. Miss Rémy says, we made it in this Regency world, and I have no doubt in my mind that we'll make it in the modern world. He turns to her and asks, what's after this? She says, maybe London for a few days, and he says, I like that. She says, and you have to come to visit me in Seattle and see my place, see where your future part-time home is, and then we'll have to go house hunting in Manhattan and Seattle. We end with everyone standing outside the castle watching fireworks. And that is it for the finale for season 1 of the Courtship. Wow, this was long. I might come out with a few follow-up videos on the courtship. I'll take requests on what people want me to cover. Just leave your comments below. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you, everybody.